So hello and welcome to another episode of Flying High with Flutter. I'm your host, allenwyma. Today we have Lukas Klingsbo, is that right?
What did you say?
I said Lukas Klingsbo. I think it's how you say your name, right?
Yeah.
I forgot to check with you before we started, but so we did start a little bit late. That's my fault. I'm in another time zone because I'm still traveling. So it's about 5:30. We should have started about 5 a.m. over here.
Yeah, and it's 2:30 here, so we're pretty much on the opposite side of the world, I guess.
Yeah. So I'm just outside of Los Angeles at the moment. You're in Europe, right?
Yeah, I'm in Stockholm in Sweden.
Oh yeah, so that's the connection. So we're talking just before the show that you've used Erlang in the past, right?
Indeed.
Is there any relation? Is that because the headquarters for Ericsson's right around the corner?
Yeah, I guess the language became more popular here since this is where it was founded, and it was very popular on the university where I studied. So and then my first programming jobs were in Erlang. Very cool, but quite different language compared to Dart, for example.
Yeah, but we were talking also that there's some inspiration from there that I forget what the heck we both don't remember what is that it's called again off the top of our heads. It's like there's no threading within Dart, but they use something very similar to it, like what's called a process within Erlang.
It's something on C.
Isolate.
Isolate, yes, that's it.
So not with a C, with an I.
Yeah, yeah, not too close.
Yeah, so isolate. So isolate's basically, if I remember correctly, one of the careers at Dart told me it's been inspired from Erlang, so it's pretty cool. Totally different way of programming. Yeah, it's a little bit weird.
Yeah.
The sad part is you cannot spin up 1 billion of these isolates, right? You have to be careful how many spin up.
Yeah, not like in Erlang where you can it's like made to run as many of its like little processors as the hardware can handle. I think like one of my friends here in Uppsala, the neighboring town, they created a game server which had like the biggest online like multiplayer game that has ever been created, and that was with Erlang too. And I think they had something like 100,000 like players that were on the same spot at the same time. It's pretty cool to see how it can handle such network load.
Oh yeah, I mean using this for game servers is definitely been used a lot, right? Because you can just represent everybody as a process. And
Yeah, exactly.
there's still quite a few people making game servers with Erlang, which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
But going back to the main topic, right? So we just did an episode with, I forgot his first name, but last name was Bayraktar. He did a plugin for Steam game.
Oh yeah, the Steamworks, right?
Steamworks, yeah.
Yeah.
And here we are.
Yeah, that's some really cool, amazing work from him. It's actually already been used to with Flame to release some games on Steam. So it's very cool to see.
Yeah, I think when I asked him, I think he said he's only aware of one other person using it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't even know where to start though.
I can do some. Should I do some introduction of Flame maybe?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Yes. So for the ones that don't know, Flame is a game engine for Flutter, and like it's pretty much the only game engine for Flutter. There is one other called Sprite Widget too, but it's not really maintained. So if you don't want to write your own game engine for Flutter, and then Flame is usually the way to go. If you need a game engine for your game, sometimes you don't. And yeah, we have been making Flame for I think 4 years almost now. We have like more than 100 contributors and a very active Discord servers and like a quite flourishing community around it all. So it's pretty cool to be part of it. And I'm part of an open source collective called Bluefire, and we're 5 people maintaining different Flutter and Dart libraries. And Flame is like the biggest one that we're developing and maintaining. I think, yeah, it's pretty much it for an introduction for Flame, I think.
Were you one of the people who actually originally started it, or were you just contributing to it?
No, I actually came in later. I was actually traveling through Russia first with the like Trans-Siberian or Trans-Mongolian Railway, and then I came down to China, and it was super hot there in the south of China. So I wanted to get away from there, but I had told myself that I wasn't going to fly that year. So I took a container ship to Canada, and like on the container ship, you don't have any internet or anything. So it was going to take 3 weeks. So I wanted to have like a project to do meanwhile I was there. So I downloaded Flame and a Box 2D port for Dart. And I sat like playing around with that because I was going to write a little game on the journey. But I ended up mostly doing fixes to Flame and to this physics engine. So yeah, then after when I arrived in Canada, I just started putting up lots of pull requests to Flame, and then I joined the core team when I came back home.
So, do you know, like, why was Flame actually started? I mean, to me, I would never actually have the idea to create a game engine with this. I just cannot imagine
Yeah,
how this kind of stuff would actually work.
yeah, since like usually when you create the game and you create it in some like low level language and such, but since we're mostly focused on 2D games, like Flutter is quite a good candidate for it because it has quite good performance for like just sorry for rendering quickly on the canvas, since all Flutter apps run in 60 FPS or higher. Yes, and it's very like handy to be able to write your game in one code base and then just throw it out on all the different platforms that Flutter supports. So that's pretty much where the idea came from.
Yeah, it seems to have caught on quite big recently, because like even Flutter is kind of pushing it themselves, right? The Flutter team.
Yeah, exactly. Very nice with like the last release when they had a Flutter game toolkit, and we got a lot of had a lot of people. We got a lot of attention from that, so it was very nice.
Now, did the Flutter team actually reach out to you guys in particular to kind of talk about what's going on?
Yeah.
What was talked about?
So they ask us like, what do you need for making your game engine better, and like how can we help with that? And yeah, so things that we need from Flutter right now that doesn't exist. So since we're only making 2D at the moment, since Flutter isn't supporting 3D, and so two of the main things that we have requested from them is shaders and a Z buffer or a C buffer, or depending on which which English pronunciation you have. But then they have started releasing some shader stuff, which is nice, which you can do a lot of cool things with. So for the ones that don't know what shaders are, is like basically a way of changing colors and things depending on where in a matrix you are. It's like calculations that are done on the graphics card. And that can like with shaders you can get a lot better performance and do a lot of cool things that you couldn't do otherwise. And other than that, what did we more talk about? They conducted some interviews with our users. So we like send them some users that are using Flame, and then they made a like proper big interview to see, okay, how are they using Flutter for creating games, and yeah, how can we develop more in that spectrum, because games was really not like initially when Skia and the core of Flutter was created, it was thought like, okay, this could be a pretty good base for a game engine. But then later they pivoted to what it is today is a UI toolkit, and then Flame came and brought it a little bit back to how it was thought to be used in the beginning.
Now, did you guys get everything that you asked for in this release for Flutter 3?
No, it takes a long time to do all the shader implementation and stuff, but they're working on it. Because it's quite complex to get that to work on all the platforms, etc.
Now, the game kit that they came out with, is that actually helpful for Flame itself, or didn't Flame have something already that was handling most of this problem?
The game kit isn't really much in there, to be honest. It's just like a recommendation of how to do different things in Flutter. And like Flame can do most things in there, and like there's an example in there of how to write a game with pretty much just pure Flutter too, which can be quite nice if you don't need to like render a lot on the canvas, which is usually when you need Flame. But a lot of games, like if you would make a Sudoku, for example, you wouldn't need to have Flame, then you could just use pure Flutter very easily. But if you would want to make, like, I don't know, Pokemon or something, then it's very nice to have something that you can structure. So in the Flame, the basic like foundation stone is called a component, and how to render those on the canvas, because Flutter, it tries to update as seldom as possible with this render tree, but Flame is the opposite. It tries to update as often as possible instead, because you just want to render the canvas all the time. So when you need something like that for your game, then Flame gives you like a lot more power than writing a game in pure Flutter. But you can still use Flutter for like where it's really strong at, like for menus and things like that, when you're using Flame. So they mix up quite nice.
Oh yeah, I'm still trying to follow. So you can still write a game with pure Flutter, but Flame is going to help you to, you said, render all the time?
Yeah.
Isn't that like, you're already rendering like 60 times per second, right?
Yeah, so to update and render all the time, like Flutter renders all the time, but there the state works differently. That there is like, okay, we update the state somewhere here, and then this part of the render tree will be updated, right? In the Flame, everything is updated all the time, so it goes through something called update render loop, which is quite classic for game engines, which makes it first goes through the update of the game. So all the like components in Flame has an update and a render method that you can override if you want to, or you just use what's in there already. And in the update method, you update all of the state that you want for that component, and in the render method, it's rendered. So it works a little bit different than from Flutter, and more like in a game engine kind of way.
Okay, yeah, because I think like you said, the big difference is that they try to localize all the different updates, right? So that you don't re-render the entire screen. But you're saying with Flame, you guys try to make it so that the entire screen will totally get re-rendered, right?
Yeah, because yeah, it's that's like pretty much what you have to do when you're doing a game engine. It's very hard to make it efficient by having to keep track of a render tree and what to update or not. So you only render the things that are visible on the screen if you use like a viewport or so, but everything just updates all the time.
Okay, I'm still trying to understand how this would kind of work in an efficient way, right? Because, like you said, the way Flutter works, everything's kind of running efficiently with the re-rendering. Now, with Flame, yeah, now my head's starting to kind of spin about how does this work, because it does sound really inefficient compared to what it was doing before.
Yeah, absolutely. It is like as inefficient as it could become, pretty much. But that's how game engines work, and it's just very hard to write it in a more efficient way so that it's still usable for the user. But the like algorithm is very inefficient with updating all the time, but we're still running like easily on 60 FPS and 120 FPS too, even though with using an update render loop instead of like a kind of trees that Flutter use.
Okay, and there's no plan for ever going 3D with Flame, right?
Yeah, sure. We as long as we would get support for 3D from Flutter, we'd surely start working on 3D support. But yeah, it's taking some. It will. I would guess that it would be a few years before we have before Flutter has full support for 3D.
I just want to make it clear because some game engines do more and some do less because, like, yeah, I mean, every single game engine kind of has their own thing. What are like the limits of where Flame kind of comes in at? Like you said, you can just build a game straight with Flutter, right? But you can do more. You could, I mean, Flame will definitely bring you a lot more to the table, right?
Indeed. Yeah, so the biggest limitation is, of course, 3D, that we don't have 3D. You can do quite cool things that are like pseudo 3D, like with sprite stacking and stuff, where it looks like it's 3D, but it's just 2D hacks to make things look like you're moving in 3D world. But other than that, like, you can't do, I don't know, say that you would use Godot or like Unreal or something, that you can do some like crazy optimizations because it's such low level and it's targeted on one platform. And we don't really have that opportunity in Flame since we're going for all platforms. I mean, we could do things with like FFI and stuff, but it becomes very tedious to maintain if we try to support our own things for all platforms too. But yeah, for the target audience that we have, like making 2D games, it works perfectly, I would say.
So, but like using Flame, right? You guys already have a couple of very good tutorials that people can follow. So, if you're a beginner to game engines, like, do I need to already have some kind of making games experience before I can start using Flame, or can I just be an experienced Flutter developer and kind of get into it?
Yeah, absolutely. You can just dive straight into it. It's yeah, it's quite easy to get into. Like the main thing is, like, if you know Dart, then it's easy. And like there are lots of we have very like there are so many community members creating tutorials, which is a lot of fun to see. So there's several YouTube series with tutorials for Flutter, and like last week or something, I got this book. So someone has just written a whole book on Flame. We didn't even know about it, which is pretty cool. And that like really shows how much it has grown lately.
So that book you had in your hands.
And as I said earlier too, if you need help.
Sorry, go ahead. No, I just want to tell people, because not everybody's going to be watching the video on here. But the book you had in your hand was called Building. Yeah, it's called Building Games with Flutter. I think that's done by which publisher is that?
Pact, I think.
Yeah, Pact.
PACKT. And I think you can find it on like Amazon. I haven't actually read it myself, but I have like things I have just skimmed through. It looks like it covers Flame pretty nicely. Yeah, and if you're starting your Flame project and you're having problems, we have a really nice Discord server too that you can join and just ask any questions, and people are very friendly and help you out. And there's also like a Stack Overflow tag for Flame too, where you get answers pretty quickly.
Yeah. Well, it's good to hear that there's actually a book written all about. So that book is all about Flame. There's no other stuff in there for other game engines or anything else.
Yeah, since it's just focused on Flutter, it's just Flame in there. I think, I don't think they even talk about how to write games without Flame. It's just all about Flame.
Yeah, is there any other competing engines within Flutter that you know of, or Flame is basically the only one?
Yeah, there is one called Sprite Widget, but that one isn't really like it's not maintained in the same way as Flame is. Like the last update it got was so the author of Sprite Widget, they have another project called ServerPod, which is like a backend server for Flutter, and the last time they updated it was basically as to showcase ServerPod. So they updated sprite widgets to show that you can have a server pod as a backend for it. And now I think it was probably half a year since it got any update.
That's the same author, so that should be Victor, right?
Exactly. Very nice
I
guy.
think he's also nearby you, no, isn't he?
Yeah, he is indeed. He's also very active in the Flutter Stockholm community. He's like driving the meetups that we're having here and such.
Yeah, we talked to him about ServerPod. He used to be working at Google a while back.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So he was at the Flutter team for some time too. And the funny thing is, he actually worked on another game engine called Cocos 2D before. So, for example, the curves library that exists in Flutter, or the curves class, it has like a lot of different curves for animations. If you wanted to like bounce in and bounce out, that pretty much came from his earlier Cocos 2D game engine, and then he brought it into Flutter, and now we use that curves thing quite extensively in Flame. So it's fun to see how code moves around through different projects.
Now we have a question from the audience. Actually, it's the guy who introduced us, Ahmet. He asked us, "What is planned for Flame in the future?"
Yeah, so I can like right now I'm working on ray tracing and ray casting. So if you go to my Twitter, which is Spydon, Spydon, you can see like a little glimpse of what's coming up with ray casting and ray tracing, which should come up in the next version of Flame, hopefully, if I don't hit too many bugs. But I'm almost finishing up now, so it has been like my summer project. And yeah, there's things happening all the time in Flame. There's so many, like I said earlier, we have like over 100 contributors, and there are PRs merged every day. So, but for our, and I can give you like a little. We haven't announced it yet, but we will have a game jam in a month or so. So where you can win some really nice prizes. So there's just a weekend where you create a game with Flame and Flutter, and get support from the community, and you like form up in groups like you do on game jams, and then just create the game, and you can win some nice prizes. Which we had it last year too, and it was a lot of fun.
Oh, so then you must have a lot of sponsors to do this, right? Unless somebody's just chipping out of their pocket for the prizes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we're gonna have a lot of sponsors. At least, yeah, I think we're gonna have 2 or 3 at least. I don't think we're going to go overboard. We don't need that much money, because we're not doing it like a physical event or anything. It's just like online. And
Who's sponsoring and what's their motivation? Like, is there actual gaming companies? Are actually big?
I don't think we can release the
Okay.
sponsors yet, actually, but I can tell it's, if you look at which companies that interact a lot with like the Bluefire account, and it's quite easy to see which our sponsors probably are going to be. But their motivations is usually like there are some like great companies in the Flutter world, like Invertase and like Very Good Ventures, and companies like that care a lot about open source. So they, and what is that one called? Like AppWrite, they also have, so they just take a lot of their budget, just goes straight into open source to just have the open source community like flourishing in Flutter, which is really nice. So obviously they will get some exposure for their company, because I guess like everyone, they're looking for developers, so they want to get developers, and if like developers of Flame, and when they're making games, see the sponsors, they're like, oh, that's maybe a cool company to work for, and yeah, and it's relatively cheap for them to ship in on things like that. It's like advertising for their company, I guess.
Oh, okay. I was curious if there's actually companies who are using this in like production to actually put games out there for profit.
Yeah, there are. So last game, yeah, I think we were sponsored by by the person. I don't remember exactly, but I think there's one game called Tomb Toad that you can check out, which is written in Flame, and it's quite cool. And I think the ones making that they sponsored us are on our last Flame Jam. But I think this time, I think it's mostly just bigger companies that don't use it. Or actually, like Very Good Ventures, if you saw on the last, when the last Flutter release was, they had this like pinball game that was made in Flame, and that was written by Very Good Ventures. So that was pretty cool. And they use this physics engine that we have also, that is a port of Box 2D, which is called Forge 2D, which is another project that we are maintaining at Bluefire.
Isn't there like another like game engine that's like built on top of Flame that's using Flame underneath or something?
Yeah, it's an RPG engine. So to make like RPG games, like and that one is called Bonfire, and it's written by a Brazilian guy called Rafael, and he's doing some really cool stuff in there. So if you want to make an RPG game, then Bonfire helps a lot with that. Like it, so Flame is like more general for any games, and Bonfire is like specifically for RPG games. It's quite cool to see.
Okay, yeah, because I remember it now. I was going to say Bonfire is probably the name, but I wasn't sure.
Yeah, it is.
You're not worried that Bonfire is going to, did they actually say that they're using Flame underneath or no? Or they just.
Yeah, they are. They are. He's very open with using Flame, and we have like a close connection to him. We like always like talk to him, and it's super nice to see that you can write something like that on top of Flame to make it more user friendly for that specific type of games.
Maybe we'll have to get him on the show to talk about how his thing works and why people should use that over just Flame itself.
Yeah, that would be cool. He should. It's a very smart person.
We have another question from the audience, which is asking, as you often work on the game engine itself, do you ever develop your own games yourself?
Yeah, I do sometimes with like when Flutter had this. They had their own game jam in January, I think it was. Then I developed a game for that. It was quite a lot of fun. And yeah, I develop a game that will probably never be finished too, but like a game where you ride around in a spaceship in space, visiting planets and doing trades and affecting different planets politically and stuff. But yeah, I don't think I will ever finish that up. But it's like nice to have that when you're doing changes on the game engine, and then you can try that in your own game and see like, oh, okay, this works quite nicely. Or when you do your own game and then you realize, okay, this is missing from Flame. So it's actually, I think it's quite important to use the library yourself. Otherwise you get kind of like disconnected from what the users actually need.
Now, yeah, that's a good question. I mean, also like when you guys are making changes, I mean, there must be some breaking changes that happen, right?
Yeah, and we also have this examples directory in Flame is set up as a monorepository, and inside of that monorepository there is an examples directory which contains 2 really small games and then examples of all our features. And so when we update something in Flame, we will directly see if there is breaking changes in the inside of all of the examples that we have, which is like at least one example per feature. But we after we released 1.0, we've tried to minimize the breaking changes a lot, but we still have some breaking changes every now and then. But they're usually not too big now, so it's quite easy for the developer to change them. And we also have this change log, which has migration steps for each breaking change, which is quite nice.
No plans to do some kind of automatic upgrade tool? I think Flutter's got something like that, right?
Yeah, I don't like. I guess we'll have to like generate code, and it's quite complex problem, I think, depending on how the breaking changes look like, or to be able to support all kinds of breaking changes. Because it's very hard to know the exact intention of something that a user does. If you don't, when you do a breaking change, it might not be like 100% mirrored to what you did before and what you will do after the breaking change. So yeah, I don't think that is something that we will focus on anytime soon. Actually, there's so much things that we want to do in the engine that we will probably focus on that before doing migration tools.
How do you figure out which is like your next thing you guys want to work on? Because like I said, you do want to get to 3D at some point, but that just depends upon Flutter itself. So you kind of reaching back to Flutter team and saying, hey, we really want to do this, but we need this thing, and then keep following up with that.
Yeah, so most of the things that we want to do are not dependent on Flutter, and we already have everything that we need. It's just like there are so many things you can do in a game engine to help your users. So like the ray tracing and ray casting that I'm doing now. And for the ones that don't know what ray tracing and ray casting is, it's like you take a point on the screen and then you send out lots of rays to, so this is ray casting, lots of rays in all directions, and you can see where they hit in the environment that they are, which makes it easier to do. So you can see where it should be shade on the screen or shadows on the screen, and you can also see like calculate the point of like what your player should be able to see, or what your enemies should be able to see on the screen, like if they have a clear line of sight of something. Or you can and we're also doing like ray tracing now, which is you send out one ray and you see how it bounces on the different things in the environment, which you can think of it as like when you shoot a pool ball or something, and how that one will bounce on the edges. So those are the things coming up like very soon. But how we actually like come up with what we want to do next, we have a meeting every week on Sundays with the Blue Fire team, and there we have like this Trello board where we pull in tickets and see that maybe this would be fun to work on. And since Flame is like, it's completely something that we do in our free time, we just pick whatever we think sounds fun. So we get ideas, and then people just like, this sounds fun, I will want to do this. So there's not much more structure to it than that.
It's pretty exciting. It's cool that you guys can still do a lot of stuff without like asking Flutter team too much stuff. How about the shaders and all that kind of stuff that you guys are asking for? You said that stuff is going to take some time, but it's definitely on their radar, and they're definitely looking to do it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have this team member called Jochum, or Wolfenrein, and he has done some really cool shader stuff. So if you want to check out like typed shaders in Flutter, there is a project called Umbra that you can look out, UMBRA, check out, and that shows that there's already quite some like cool support for shaders, for some specific type of shaders in Flutter, but like we clearly want a lot more, and we're getting it slowly too. So, and yeah, it's very nice to like, we're 5 people, and then we have like Google asking us what we want, which is a pretty cool thing, I think.
Do they give any kind of ETA on things, or they're just like, okay, we will prioritize this, but it takes time?
Yeah, usually like for smaller things we can get ETAs, but things like shaders and set buffers and stuff, that we don't get any ETAs on. So we don't have any secret insights into those. It's just we can see as much as the others can with on the issues on GitHub and so on.
Yeah, I mean, is there any good reason not to use, like, why would I take? Let's start it this way. What are some good reasons to use Flame, and what are not some good reasons to use Flame? if as somebody who's been working on the engine.
Yeah, so if someone is used to a big engine like Unity or like Unreal or like Godot, like in Flame we don't have any editor, for example, and there's no like scripting language or anything on top of it. So so if you're used to having a full like editor like there is in Unity, then you might be like it's a completely different thing to just write your whole gaming code, I guess, than to like get a lot of help from the editor, like visually. So I guess that would be like a con of Flame. And there might be at some point in the future might be a bit of an editor, but like comparing us being like 5 people to like Unity that has, I don't know, hundreds of employees, it's quite different, but you also get a completely different community feeling. So and also like the main point, like the main strength of Flame is that you get full like real cross-platform support. You have it like kind of in other game engines too, but it's a lot of hassle compared to getting it in Flame.
Yeah, I think Unity is a big one about multi-platform, right? But they must do something. They have something totally differently.
Yeah, exactly. And as far as I know, they don't have the same type of debugging tools that we would get in Flutter, for example, to run it on all platforms like that. But I haven't actually used Unity much. So.
Okay. I'm kind of curious though. Is there any? I mean, because like I think web is, to me, web is like totally different than the others. So, is there like any kind of stuff that we should be aware of when we're working with Flame that like, okay, these things work fine, but this does not work fine in these platforms?
I mean, everything that we put into the core of Flame that is supported on all platforms, but things like the shaders, for example, they don't work at all on web yet, but they work on the other platforms. So yeah, just like you're saying, like web is a very different platform from desktop and like hardware, like Android and iOS, and I think that is why it's also taking a lot more time for the Flutter team to get in support for those kind of things for web.
Now, is it something that's actually going to be solved, or is something that just is just limitation?
No, I think they will solve it. It's just a matter of time. And yeah, smart people have to do some smart things to to be able to figure that out. And but I think Google has those people. It's just a matter of time.
Cool. Yeah, I don't think I have any more questions. I mean, is there anything that you wanted people to know or to do or keep on the radar out? Keep on the look on the radar. Is that the right phrase? It's been a while since I've been in US, so my English is getting worse.
Yeah. Where are you from, actually?
No, I'm actually from US. Just I've been living in Hong Kong for over 10 years, so I have to get used to like UK English and then people whose English is not their first language. So it's like,
Yeah.
and then my English has changed quite a lot when I talk to people now.
Yeah, that's interesting. Hong Kong is pretty nice. Yeah, things that I don't know. We have a Patreon if you want to support Bluefire. I have this like GitHub sponsors thing, but as I said, we do this for fun. It's not to get like any money or anything. You can follow us on Twitter too. It's Bluefire, and we put up things that happen to Flame and our other packages there. And if you want to get like more insight into what I'm working on Flame, I'm pretty much only tweeting about Flame stuff. So you can, like, if you're interested in that, you can follow me, and it's Spidon. Other than that, I don't know. I think you should just, if you feel like you like, I think pretty much everyone that is a developer has at some point like, oh, it would be fun to write a game. But a lot of people, they just never do it. They think about it, but I think like now is your chance. If you're a Flutter developer, just try it out. Take a weekend, and you will be able to write a small game and get into it. It's a lot of fun. So yeah, just try out Flame and join our Discord.
Yeah, I think that's for a lot of people. They would say, you know what, the main thing I have is just try it. You know, try it. Let us know if you like it or don't like it, and see if it's for you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and if, like, even for the people that don't like it, like, their feedback is super valuable for us to continue developing Flame.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah, it's on my radar to play with. Just haven't had much time. Plus,
Yeah,
Ahmet reminded me that there is a lot involved with making games. It's not just typing out code, right? You got to have all the assets and an idea. The idea is probably the hardest part, and then I think the second one is, what should these
yeah,
characters look like?
indeed.
What things do I need, etc.
Yeah, if you're like me, there that has no art skills at all, there is a pretty good site called itch.io, which has a lot of free assets for making games, and also you can pay like $5 and get the full pack of different assets, and it's like amazing art. So if you want to get into making a game but don't have any art skills, but you have the coding skills, then I really recommend just like downloading some already made assets. It makes your game a lot cooler very fast.
Also, Humble Bundle I've seen always has a lot of stuff
Yeah,
like video FX, so not video effects, but game assets and game music sounds, all kinds of stuff. I don't know if you can use all of it, but definitely some of it I'm sure you can use.
yeah, for sure. You can usually like list it by licenses and see what you're able to use.
Okay. Well, Lucas, thank you so much for your time. Again, I apologize about coming so late. I'm happy you
No problem.
waited around. I guess maybe you had nothing else to you booked the time for an hour already, right? So it's just kind of like, all right, this guy's coming hopefully.
I hope you get back to sleep after this. You must be so tired.
No, I'm not too bad because I fell back asleep, and then as you can see in the video, I've been drinking energy drink to kind of wake up a bit.
Ah, perfect.
Yeah, I gotta eat. I think I need to adjust to everything while I'm in the west, or sorry, when I'm in the, is it the West Coast? Yeah, when I'm in the West Coast, because it's 2 hours earlier than I was expecting.
Yeah, the time zones are horrible.
US is just too big.
Yeah, yeah, just shrink US.
Okay, well, again, thanks for your time. Again, definitely will try to check this out.
Thanks a lot for having me. It was a lot of fun.